Hello again, everybody. This is Joseph again, and today we're going to discuss wiring diagrams, how to interpret it for radios. And specifically, this one is for Toyota, Lexus, Camry, but it can be for any make or model. The theory is the same. Now, how to read a schematic, we've been going over videos, and I wanted to just prove to you that once you know the function and the symbols, then you know the purpose and how to put everything together. Now, when it comes to the radio, main parts when we start reading a schematic, this is a main part that we talked about. The radio itself, that's a main part. Then there's a connector, okay, to connect the wiring. Then there is auto, antenna, motor, and relay, which is to turn on the antenna to receive signals. It's a receiver to receive frequency modulation and amplitude modulation. In order to do that, you have to activate the antenna, and this is done through this, like a module. Now, there are three options available. You know, in your car, when you turn on the radio, right? If you already had the radio turned on, first one is to put the ignition switch, and this is a main part that we focus on, is to turn on ignition switch in accessories. Some vehicles will call it run position. So it's the same purpose. Might have a different vocabulary, but it's the same purpose. Now, when we have it in run or accessories for Toyotas, we're not cranking the engine. All we are is putting on perhaps lights, or in this case, activating the radio. Now, as you can see, the other option would be to put it in when you first crank the engine, right? Which is past accessories. You want to actually start the car. The ignition switch, you put it on to start. Now, you're not going to hold it for long, obviously. You're just going to hold it enough to crank the engine. A couple of seconds, right? And the radio also will be turned on. So you have two options that we spoke about: accessories without engine, ignition with engine, and radio playing. Other one is, and we'll go over the schematic, other one is the radio itself. Not to turn on the ignition switch, not even put the key. It would work without it. How do we know? Now, if we follow the schematic, and where do we start from? This is the starting point that we spoke about. Where do I start from when I'm looking at a schematic? Do I start from here? I focus on main points. If I want to figure out how the radio is playing, I start from this point over here, from the ignition switch, like we said. Now, if you follow the yellow line, or the purple line actually, the battery through a fusible link. FL stands for fusible link. How do I know that? If I go up in the diagram, I see fusible link, so I know FL is the abbreviation for that. Like I said, sometimes you have to look other places to figure out abbreviations. It goes into this fusible link block over here. A is the terminal, C is the terminal. On this side, pin 1, pin 1. Now, fusible link are two wires soldered together that they melt when the current exceeds the rating, like a fuse. Now, if you notice, there is no ignition switch in this path. Let's take the path of current. Current is flowing here. Follow the purple into this fuse. This is a fuse. See the difference between this? Fusible link is a little thicker and wavier, and this is a fuse, and it has around it, okay? Two terminals around it, similar to that, but very thin. Now, current flows here through all these connections to here, and as you see, it's called B+, raw B+, coming from the battery. One path is here, right, for the relay and the motor. Other path is to the radio, and that's why it's called B plus, because it's coming raw B plus coming in from here. We bypass the ignition switch. Okay, so we have B plus on the purple line over here, right? Then this will turn on the antenna. You need the antenna, like a power antenna. You need it to be activated to receive signals. And that's where this part lies, the antenna over here. As you can see, antenna plus B plus to turn on the antenna. So a B plus has to be given to this module also. So this is B plus. B plus means no ignition switch. Turn on the antenna, activate it, boom, we receive signals. Everything goes to the proper speaker. In this case, how many speakers? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a symbol for a speaker. We'll go through it in a second. Next was the other option we spoke about. Follow the green. Well, we just not crank engine. We just turn on the radio through the ignition switch. Go over here. Follow the green. Again, through a fuse. One side of fuse coming out the other side of fuse. Again, going to this. Right? It's not called B plus anymore. It's called accessories. Giving it a voltage. Same B plus volt. Same 12 volts into here to activate this motor and the relay for the antenna. And at the same time to give 12 volts over here to the radio. So basically it's the same purpose. As you can see, this is without the switch, but still we need a B plus to activate the motor and the relay for the antenna and for the radio. For the accessories, same thing applies, except we call it accessory. It's going through the switch. Third one that we spoke about is when you crank the engine, called ignition. In some places it'll call start. Run and start. Accessories. Toyota has this vocabulary that they use. But like I said, the meanings are the same, the purpose are the same of the switch. Switch is just to put two connectors together to make a solid connection, to connect one side to another side. That's two terminals together. That's basically what it is. So now follow the orange line through this. Again, always a fuse involved, always. If you notice, the most rated fuse is the one that didn't go through the switch. 3 that bypassed it. Look at this rating, 20 amps, right? Look at accessories, 7.5 amps. And finally, look at this one, ECU. Look at this one, 15 amps. This one has the most, where you bypassed this, right? Now, when we get to this, we only have one path. It goes in here and it goes in here. Correct? Right? So now you're going to say, okay, we're cranking it and cranking it. Now, you also have an antenna giving it B plus through this one. From here to here, you're feeding the B plus for this module, and you're also feeding B plus for this one, for the radio. Again, for the antenna, for the motor, for the relay, power antenna to turn on the antennas again to receive signals coming through the switch from B plus and activate the radio. So all three cases, we activate the antenna, we activate the radio from B plus. Whether it's going through the switch or not going through the switch is a different situation, different issue. However, the purpose is the same. We need one to turn on the antenna and the relay and the motor, and the one to turn on the radio. Therefore, the connections to the radio, as you see, that I said we will discuss, B plus with no switch, accessories, no crank of engine, and this one with a crank of engine. So when we come to this point, and this is a junction, this is just basically to wire, a wiring block connector. One here, one here. The current splits here, has two branches, it splits up. Two branches. This one only has one branch. It goes to this, but it feeds the B plus for the radio and for the antenna to work. Either case. Now, we spoke about this. 4 speakers involved. How many wiring? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 terminals plus 12 plus a ground. So 12 terminals to be connected. Or 12 wires. Correct? This stands for front. I wrote it here. Left. 2 wires. Always in a speaker. One will be positive, one will be negative. Doesn't matter the polarity of the speaker, how you put it in. Has no polarity. Next one, front, positive and negative. Right. Those are the front. What about the rear? Same rule applies. Left, 2 wires. Right, rear, 2 wires. You have a ground. You need a ground. You need a B plus. For 3 possible situations, you need B. Correct? As we say it again, for the crank, no crank, but through the switch, ignition switch, with no crank and no switch involved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 wires connected to the radio. So, please go over it. Please subscribe to my channel, Automotive Electronic Schematics by Joseph. And to see much more about troubleshooting, diagnostics, schematics of cars, and Joe Electronic Schematics, my other channel. Now, as far as troubleshooting, let's say my radio doesn't work. So, if my radio doesn't work when I bypass the ignition switch, and I just go and I put it on without no switch, no key, obviously, it doesn't work, that means this blew. Correct? If it does work without putting in the ignition switch, correct? I'm putting in my key, correct? I put it in, it works on accessories. However, when I crank, it doesn't work. Now, I want it to work when I'm driving. If I'm driving and obviously I have engine on, I want the radio on at the same time, correct? Therefore, I do not focus on accessories. I focus on this line when it's cranking. That must mean that this fuse must be the problem. Or this connector. Or this, not giving it B+. Correct? It has nothing to do with speakers right now. It's not being activated. Maybe the antenna is not being activated. But why do I say that? I'm driving 50 miles an hour. I put the radio on. All of a sudden, boom, no radio. Okay, I stop the car. I put it on accessories. Wow, the radio works. So I know this fuse, this works. I don't even put the key on the ignition. I just put on the radio. According to this should work. This works. So when I'm driving and I'm putting the radio on, the only thing involved would be this path. And the only thing in this path is the fuse, or maybe the switch might be not making contact over here. This or this over here. Again, it would not be the problem, would not be over here, and the problem would not be over here because we're cranking the engine. It's a different path. And forget about the speakers. Could have a ground, also possible, but that would affect all 3 of them when I have it in all 3 positions. Therefore, you concentrate on this. When I'm driving with the engine cranking and there's no radio, on this one. If I'm not driving, but I do put on the ignition switch on accessories, I am concentrating on this path, the green. If I am not putting in the ignition switch, but I'm just putting on the radio, I will be concentrating on this, the fusible link. Right? Can you say it's a battery? Nope, because it works in other positions. It started the car. How did the battery start the car? How did it crank the car? How did it give about 200 amps, 250 amps to start the car, depending if it's a V6 or V8? Battery must be good, right? So therefore, I must induce or say, infer that this is the problem over here or anywhere over here. Anyway, Reading a diagram is difficult, and it takes practice and dedication. It took me quite a while to actually get the skill of reading, interpreting diagrams, and diagnosing it and troubleshooting from schematics. But this wiring diagram for radio is basics for all make and models. Doesn't matter what it is. You still have speakers, you still need B plus, and you still need a ground. And you still have to go through the switch and start or run or whatever. Anyway, please subscribe to my channel. You'll see much more videos about diagnostics, like I said, automotive electronic schematics by Joseph. And this channel is Joe Electronic Schematics. You'll find educational, student electronic tutorials for amplifiers, transistors, all the basics. Thanks for watching again.